For as great as Jak was, he would never have succeeded without his often forgotten but faithful sidekick, Daxter, a wisecracking, obnoxious nincompoop.
What am I, chub liver?
Daxter is one of the most forgotten sidekicks in the gaming universe. And if you don't know who Daxter is, then you're proving my point. Daxter is a character from the Jak and Daxter video game series, first introduced in Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy. Daxter is presented as Jak's cowardly, vulgar, and womanizing best friend, but to many he is known as the comedic relief character.
Can't seem to catch a single fish in this river.
Woo! Maybe it's your breath.
Daxter's accidental transformation into an Otzel sets the plot for the Precursor's legacy into motion. This was him before. How did he turn into this, you may ask? Well, that's where things get funny. And not funny, haha, funny. He turns into an Otzel because his best friend Jak took him to a place called Misty Island that they were specifically told not to go to. Daxter did not want to go, but he did anyway to support his best friend. Then, Jak pushes him into a pool of dark eco, and out comes Otzel.
Man, that stung! I told you we shouldn't have come here, and you listened! What?
Now the whole point of the first game is to find a guy named Gaul, who is a sage and the master of the dark eco, to turn Daxter back. Basically, fixing the mess that Jak created. Throughout the whole game, Daxter is telling Jak what to do. Usually, he is the conversation starter because Jak is mute. You guys cannot tell me that Daxter was not carrying this whole game on his back. Unfortunately, throughout the game, they find out that Gaul is actually evil. Gaul was known as the Sage of Dark Eco before an unhealthy amount of exposure allowed the Eco to infect him, along with his sister Maya. They together plotted to kidnap the other Eco Sages, take control of the animalistic race of Lurkers, and flood the world with Dark Eco in order to reshape it to their liking. But Jak and Daxter did find out a way that they could kill Gaul, which is with White Eco. The problem is that they could either use the eco that they did have to kill Gaul, or to change Daxter back. And Daxter decides to be the hero and use it to save the world instead of himself.
Oh, great! I get to help the guy that turned me into a furball destroy the only person who can turn me back!
But I guess if he saved himself, they probably would have just killed him. But still, how is Jak the bigger hero? All the kudos goes to Jak. Then you have Jak 2, and most fans' immediate thoughts when the game first came out is why did they drop Daxter from the title? But anyways, in the start of the second game, Jak and Daxter and the gang get pulled into a time rift, blasting them 500 years into the future. Jak immediately gets captured while Daxter runs away, making a promise that he'll be back to save Jak.
Don't worry, Jak! I'll save you before you know it!
Flash forward 2 years later and we still see Jak getting tortured. But now Daxter comes to save the day. What happened in those 2 years, you may ask? Well, that, my gamer friends, takes us to a spin-off that came out years after the trilogy called Daxter. This game takes us on a journey of an Otzel trying to save his best friend. The funny thing is, Naughty Dog didn't even make this game. They did make the other ones, but usually when other devs take over the other people's games, they don't usually come out as good. But this game won the hearts of many fans. In this game, Daxter gets recruited as an exterminator by the Santa Claus looking guy. And he goes through his life killing bugs using all kinds of different weapons and machinery. He's just living his life, conversing, going to bars, talking to girls. He's even driving on his own. And you might be saying, oh, that's a smaller vehicle. But if this big Santa Claus looking dude is getting in that car, you can't tell me it's a smaller vehicle.
Ho 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 ho!
But Daxter is fitting into smaller spaces, getting bugs. He even has this ninja side quest game that you can play. He's able to complete his own puzzles and show his own sense of creativity, getting the attention that he deserves. But one day, he sees Jak, and he's reminded about how he needs to save him.
I keep thinking I've forgotten to do something. You know, something important. I can't help but think... Jak! That's it! Hang on, buddy!
So that's what he does. And he's able to do so in a short period of time, from when he actually remembers. He even gets his own little sidekick, Tick. It's funny because most of the Daxter game isn't even about going to save Jak. But when he is finally able to get Jak, he even brings him a fresh pair of clothes. How thoughtful. Another common theme that you are able to see throughout the game is how good of a storyteller Daxter is.
And there I was, toe-to-toe with 55 of the nastiest lurkers you ever saw.
He's always good at setting up the scenes and making the listeners pay attention. So that leads us to Jak 2. But honestly, Daxter plays kind of the same role in both Jak 2 and 3, so for the purpose of this video, we're going to mash them together. And I will be doing more Jak and Daxter videos later on, so make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for that.
I've been looking for you for 2 years! Say something! Just this once!
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Again, Jak can now talk, so he is able to stand out a bit more than previous games. The spotlight is more on him, but the duties are still the same. During both games, people called Daxter things like rat and other mean names, and continuing to only thank Jak for saving the day. Everyone except this one girl named Tess, who has an animal kink. No, really. Girl has issues. But she seems to be the only person to give Daxter his flowers, along with making sure Jak is equipped with the best weapons to protect Daxter in battle. Everyone sees Jak as being special, but to be honest, they both are. I get that Jak has these eco powers, but Daxter is literally a human turned Ottsel. Aren't they both kind of special?
Jak? Hey, what am I, chub liver?
For a while, I could not see the value Jak was bringing to their friendship. When Daxter went 2 years without Jak, it seemed as though he was doing just fine, but Jak couldn't escape by himself without Daxter. Friends are supposed to lift each other up and encourage each other. I didn't see much of that until this one scene at the end of Jak 2, where Daxter had to race in place of Jak because he had stormed off, and Daxter actually won.
I'm proud of you, Dax.
Really?
Yeah, you did great.
Jak actually told him that he did a good job, and Daxter was actually taken aback by this, because he never hears that. And isn't that just sad? In Jak 3, Daxter did seem to get a little more playtime than the rest of the games in the trilogy. Again, getting into those smaller spaces, killing the bugs. There's even a point in the game where he is literally portrayed as Pac-Man. I was like, bro, what is this? But the playstyle started to remind me more of Ratchet and Clank. Yes, Clank is Ratchet's sidekick, but he brought a lot of value to the gameplay along with Ratchet. And they kept Clank's name in all of the games throughout the whole series. They didn't just call it Ratchet, but Clank did get a spin-off on the PSP. In Jak 3, instead of Daxter just sitting on Jak's shoulders talking and making snarky comments the whole game, he was actually able to hop off and do more things on his own. And that in itself was refreshing. He then started to get more recognition, meaning Tessa's kink started getting a lot stronger.
I want you to protect my little baby with this, or else I'll hunt you down and hurt you real bad, okay?
As he starts to be involved in more missions, he is also starting to get more brave. We finally get to see some character progression. I always had wondered why in the beginning of the first Jak and Daxter game, it seemed as though he was not as outspoken. But as soon as he turned into an Ottsel, it seemed as though he could put his guard down and just pretty much say whatever he wanted. But it seemed as though he kept the trait of being cautious about his surroundings. But once Jak had gotten personally hurt by the bad guy, Daxter was willing to chase the monsters down instead of having to be forced to do it.
After him, Jak!
You're willing to go down there? Without a fuss this time.
Yeah, well, don't get used to it. It's just that nobody hurts my best friend and lives to brag about it. Let's get him!
He doesn't play about his best friend. As I was nearing the end of Jak 3, I was pretty disappointed that it seemed like we started the series pretty much trying to fix Daxter's problem and his issue of turning into an Ottsel. It seemed as though they pretty much had given up on that. Now, Daxter has to live with Jak's messed up mistake for the rest of his Ottsel life. However long that is. But the end of Jak 3 really changed my outlook on that aspect. Throughout the series, Jak and Daxter always looked up to the precursors, listening to the oracles, who are those talking statues that they give the precursor orbs to. These statues have been giving them advice and granting them power cells and new abilities. It turns out that those talking statues are really just Ottsels. They are the most powerful beings in the universe. They stated the reason why Daxter looks like them is because
all eco contains the source of our essence, our code, so to speak. When Daxter touched the dark eco, he was actually blessed when he thought he was cursed.
So he's a precursor, kind of like in-game gods, which is good news because it turns out that Daxter is really more than what everybody thought he was, and is really a full circle moment for the game, because they had went so long without discussing it. They even turned his, I guess, girlfriend into an Ottsel, but hey, she wasn't complaining. At the very end of the game, Daxter was granted one wish, and he had plenty of opportunity to turn himself back into a human, but all he decided to do was to wish for a pair of pants. He states that he would not change a thing about his life, and no matter what people think about how bad he had gotten things, that's all that matters. And isn't that just a huge life lesson? Do what makes you happy. At the end, Daxter learned to love himself as an Ottsel.
Oh yeah, life is good.
And so do we all. We have to admit the game would not be the same without him being a little furry orange dude. They still should have stuck with the Jak and Daxter title though. Just my opinion. And if you like game breakdowns and analysis, make sure to subscribe because we do that a lot here. AK out.